All right, look what we got today. Bartlett pears. You're gonna wanna make this one.
I'm ready to fly down 65, hit the coastline in the sunshine. I'm going to find my new high.
All right, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're making a favorite of mine, pear wine, old-fashioned pear wine. Look at these. These are Bartlett pears that are in season right now. Usually, September, October, fallish is when it's a good time to get these. But a lot of your grocery stores will have these all year long. But what you want to do when you're making pear wine is you want to make sure they're very ripe as you can get them. I gotta taste one of these. This is ripe. And juicy too. You should smell these right now. They are incredible. I know they're ripe enough. Let's just cut some fruit. And you're gonna need these additives to make wine, because if you don't, you're asking for trouble. And one of these is a must for pear wine. And we'll go into these additives as we go through this video, but these are all in our Amazon store. I hope you check that out. It's brand new, a one-stop shop. You get to the store and you go to the wine section and everything is in there that you're gonna see on this channel. So this video is a lot like my apple wine video. Make sure you're watching it. But how much fruit do you need to make pear wine? You need 5 to 6 pounds of pears for 1 gallon. So we're making a 3-gallon batch. This is 20 pounds. So this will be plenty to get our flavor of our pears into our wine. And it's time to get some sanitizer mixed up. Make sure you're watching my sanitation video. I go over how to use this in depth, but make sure you're using Star San because it's one of my favorites. And if you're not on Instagram, what are you waiting for? We just gave away a wine fridge on there. You've got to get on there because you would have seen this wine was coming, because my wife took a sneak peek of the pears and put them out there. Remember, the riper they are, the sweeter your wine's gonna be, and the better, and the more juice is gonna come out. Now, one thing when you're getting pears, you wanna get organic anytime you can, because that's gonna avoid pesticides. I'm not sure if these are organic. It didn't say, so I'm assuming they're not. So what I wanna do is you wanna wash them. We gotta put these in some water and get any chemicals or anything off of here that we can. Everybody gets in the pool. It's time to get some of our pears cut. Sanitize everything. I'm gonna use a core here, hopefully, if they're not too mushy and ripe. Make sure you're sanitizing your bowls that you're putting your fruit in. That is a must. There we go. And don't forget your cutting surface. Now, what we wanna do is we wanna take the pear, we're gonna cut off this end here, like that. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our core and hopefully go right down the middle here, like this, and remove the core, because you don't want any seeds in here. The seeds can be bad in winemaking, especially in apples and pears. So that goes in the trash. And there's our pear. See that? That's what we want. So we're gonna just cut these up into little bit smaller chunks. But that's what we're gonna do. We got a lot of cutting to do, so let's just keep going on this. I will tell you one thing. You can see from this cutting board, these things, see now there, we didn't get the seeds in, so we're just gonna cut those out just like that. But what I was gonna say, you can see how juicy these pears are. They're gonna be incredible. Now, pears, they're gonna brown on you fairly quickly, but that's okay. It doesn't matter really in winemaking. Now, if we were gonna serve this, obviously it would be an issue, but this is just going into wine. If you were gonna use non-organic, you could peel your pears. That would be a great idea if you don't wanna attempt to get any of those pesticides on. But you can see on this one's got a bad spot. You wanna make sure that you're cutting out any bad spots. You don't know what's in that. So that is going in the compost. Now, you all know we need sugar in winemaking, and Do not deviate from this. You need 2 pounds of sugar for every gallon of wine. We want 6 pounds since we're making a 3-gallon batch. There's 1. It's gonna take almost this 10-pound bag. 3, and there we go, 6 pounds. Now we could just get this in our stock pot and cover with water. And there's our water. Again, all we're trying to do is dissolve this sugar. There is no exact water measurement because we're gonna dial the ABV in a little bit later. So there we go. We got this on the stove. We got the heat turned on, and all you want to do is get this dissolved crystal clear. I'll fast forward this. Do not burn it. Do not boil it. Just constantly stir until you're not scraping any sugar off of the bottom. All right, while that sugar water's finishing up on the stove, let's cut the rest of this 20 pounds of pears up and get them in our bowl. All right, you can kind of, you probably can't see it, but there's bubbles starting to form at the bottom. It's clear. I'm not scraping sugar. Turn off the heat and let this cool to room temperature. Oh my God, these pears smell good. This wine's gonna be fantastic. Now, I will give you a tip. A lot of times, if you don't want to just make regular pear, this is a great fruit to add other things to. Like I was debating whether I add strawberries in this, but I kind of wanted to show you the traditional way of making pear wine. So that's what I'm gonna do. You could add mango to this. There's all kinds of things you could do to this. Now it's time to get our additives ready so we can get this pears in there because these are gonna turn brown fairly quickly. And move aside, pear wine. This is for the compost. Don't waste this. Put it in your compost pile if you have one. All right, it's time to get our additives. I like to put them at the bottom of the bucket just in case anything spills and I'm not ruining my fruit. So the very first thing we're gonna put in, we're gonna use sodium metabisulfate, which is the same thing as Camden tablets. If you got Camden tablets, you wanna use 1 per gallon. I ran out, so I'm going to this, which I wanna use up anyway. For this, you don't need much of this. It is the same thing as a Camden tablet, just in a powdered form. So for this 3-gallon batch, I only want 1/8 of a teaspoon of this. So that's all we need. If you're doing 1 gallon, just use about half of that. Get that in there. All right, the next thing we're gonna put in is pectic enzyme. For pear wine, this is critical. In fact, we may hit it twice with this because there's gonna be a lot of pectin in there, which is gonna make the wine cloudy. So this is gonna help with hazing in the wine. For now, I'm just gonna use the recommended dose, a half a teaspoon per gallon of wine. So 3 of these for my 3-gallon batch. All right, the next thing, this big boy here, I bought acid blend. You gotta use acid blend for pear wine because it's not much acid in here. So this is just gonna help balance it and give us a full-bodied wine. That's what we're aiming for. So we want a half a teaspoon of this per gallon. So I'm putting 3 of these in too. Now the next thing, since we're not using grapes in this, if I was adding grapes to this pear wine, I probably wouldn't use this, but wine tannin is a necessity because it's just gonna give you a full body wine. That's what we want. 3 of these, 3 half teaspoons, since it's a 3-gallon batch. Now the next necessity, yeast nutrient. We want to get a boost for our yeast, a healthy yeast. Now, if you're gonna use fruit to make wine, fresh fruit, you gotta have one of these. This is a mesh bag to help strain our fruit when we get to that point and it's done fermenting. But this, in my opinion, is a necessity tool if you're gonna stay in this hobby. Now, you don't need this if you're just making wine from juice. It's just gonna save you a lot of steps. You've gotta get a mesh bag. All right, I'm just gonna put some in here. I love your comments because a lot of people say, I struggle with this bag, but it's just that I'm lazy. Don't wanna have to clip this down and sanitize the clip, so I'm just going to add this in a little bit, and then once I get it down to manageable, I will just dump the rest of this in. But man, I tell you, these pears are incredible and super ripe. It's gonna make a great wine. All right, so there we go. I think I got enough in there that I can just dump the rest. No comments about this. There we go. Get it all in there. All that juice. Perfection. All right, now it's time to get this cinched up. Now remember I said reuse your mesh bags because they're a pain to clean, but they're reusable. A lot of these strings don't work very well, so I always use a zip tie so we got no stuff coming out. All right, now you remember the sugar water that's been cooled down to room temperature. We can add this to the wine right now. So there we go. That's what we're gonna do. And then we're gonna get the ABV dialed in. That's what you're trying to get to. So now remember, we got those additives at the bottom. So I'm just gonna stir a little bit of those in at this point. Again, we're gonna be stirring this for the next several days. So this will get incorporated as we go. What we gotta do is add water in here at this point because we wanna check the ABV, but I know we're way down. This thing's probably gonna come up to, I don't know, maybe right about here because there's a lot of pulp in there from that fruit. Now is we'll just stir that water in and we'll take an ABV reading. And usually when I'm doing a large batch like this, it's easy enough for me to float the hydrometer in here. The final reading, I'll show you where we're at. So let me get my sanitized hydrometer, which I got right here. I know we got a lot more to add, so this is gonna probably come up, yeah. Right now it reads about 15, 16%, so still high. We'll just keep adding water until we get it to where we want. And make sure you're doing this a little bit at a time because you don't wanna overshoot your mark. Hold my hydrometer here, get it stirred in once again. Make sure you're doing that each time you're adding water. And let's see where we're at now. Make sure you're reading the right side of your hydrometer because I've made that mistake a few times. All right, that's exactly like at 12%. So that's where I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stop here. I'll show you where it's at with a final reading here. I'll put some in my, my cylinder. All right, I got a sanitized cylinder here and my cup is sanitized. So we'll just add some wine in here and float the hydrometer just so you can see where it's at. And there we go. Now I got my hydrometer and I'll just drop this in and we'll get a close up for you to see where it's at. It's about 13%. Let's put this wine back here and I'll show you what we're gonna do next. So the only thing left to do is get our lid in. You make sure again, sanitize. If you're gonna fail, it's because you didn't do this. So there we go, dripping that off in the sink. And I'll get this on here. Again, you wanna make sure you're filling this up about halfway on this particular airlock. So just like that, get the lid on here. And a lot of people say, do I have to put anything particular in here? This is just regular water, that's all you need. You could put your Star San sanitizer mix if you want, but it's just not necessary. Get the airlock on in here. Now, you notice we didn't do one thing. We didn't put any yeast in here because you gotta wait 24 hours for that sodium metabisulfite to work and kill any wild yeast. That's what that's trying to do, kill any wild yeast, because when we add our yeast, we wanna use that yeast because it's made for winemaking. I'll see you in 24 hours. All right, it's been exactly 24 hours since we started this Pear wine, and it's time to get our yeast in here. This is Red Star yeast. This is my favorite. It's in our store. Check it out if you need some. So let's just get this opened up. Oh, smells fantastic. Sanitize your paddle. What we're gonna do is just stir this. Let me get a close up of this. All right, so there you go. You can see this pear and it smells incredible. So again, I'm just gonna stir this before we add our yeast, just because you wanna do that. Every time you're opening this, you gotta keep your fruit moist. You don't wanna risk mold getting into this. So there we go. I got my Red Star. This whole pack is good for about a 3 to 5 gallon batch. If you're only doing a 1 gallon batch, you only need about half of this. So all I'm gonna do, we're not gonna stir this in. We're just gonna add it wherever I see liquid in this bucket, just like that. And that's it. And we'll be back in 24 hours and see if we're working now. All right, it has been a little over 24 hours. You can see this bubbler is already going crazy on this pear wine. So what we want to do now is we want to stir this wine for the next, probably 5 days or so until this kind of starts to slow down. Then we want to stop stirring it because we want to stop oxygen from getting in here. But at this point, let's get this open up and see what it looks like, because I could really smell the yeast coming out on this right now. Whew. Remember, we didn't stir that yeast in yet. All right, we got that sanitized paddle here. You can see, do you see all the foam that's here? That's making wine, pear wine. So all we're gonna do, you can see I'm scraping a little bit of this stuff on the side. That's just yeast in there. And we wanna get that down in our bucket as much as we can. So if you see foam like this, fermentation is happening, and you can smell this yeast in here. And I smell the alcohol and I smell the pears. This is gonna be fantastic. I'll fast forward this. I don't wanna bore you too much because I'm doing the same thing each day for 5 days. All we wanna do is get the lid back on here, and we wanna get it sealed back up. All right, you can see the bubbler still going very well. We're on day 3, I think. So we're just gonna open this up, and then I won't bore you with the rest of it because it's all gonna be the same. But look what we got here. We got a lot of foam, which is what we want. We're gonna scrape our side just like this the whole way around. That yeast there down in a little bit. And we'll stir this each day until fermentation slows down on that fermenter to about one bubble every minute. That's usually my goal. And then we'll get it into the secondary. Make sure you're keeping your fruit moist here. That's another reason why we're stirring it. You don't want to get that moldy. So we'll just close this up. We'll fast forward to part 2. So don't miss that. And we're gonna finish this and taste it. That's it.
I'm ready to fly down 65, hit the coastline.